Good morning, everyone. Today we have the immense privilege of having a very special guest, Ditmir Bushati. Ditmir Bushati is a member of parliament of Albania since 2009. He has served as a Minister of Foreign Affairs between 2013 and 2017, and Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs between 2017 and 2019. He is also the host of a great podcast that I really recommend you called Public Square Podcast. Bushati, it's an immense honor for us to have you.
It's also a great pleasure to be with you, Carlo, here at your podcast.
Today with Mr. Bushati, we want to discuss about four key things: geopolitics, enlargement, the relationship between Albania and Italy, and obviously lesson from his experience. I would say to start immediately. You spent now, and that's how we met, several months as fellow at the Weatherhead Center at Harvard. From your perspective, from the point of view that you saw, how do you see the current state of the Europe-US relationship, including non-EU countries such as Albania?
First, there is a shift in terms of the traditional relationship between US and Europe. Why I'm saying traditional? Because after the Second World War, it was US that supported very much the reconstruction project of Europe through Marshall Plan. And we Europeans, although we were divided in two main blocks, West and East, were witnessing the democratic and security support coming from US through the so-called Truman Doctrine. Later on, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, US was seen as a beacon of hope, as a beacon of liberal democracy, and as a country leader in the Western world. It was because of clear stance of US foreign policy that countries like Albania, but the whole Eastern and Southern European countries that emerged from communism were gradually in the process of joining first NATO and later on European Union. We see a shift, what I called a troubled relationship between US and Europe, that it is somehow also impacting the consolidation of the European project. It didn't start with the current administration, although now it's quite blatant. It started with the previous administration due to the fact that the US was pivoting towards Indo-Pacific. Let me remind you that there are few or less and less politicians at the apex of US foreign policy that are being shaped by Cold War mindset, do have their ancestors from Europe. This reflects somehow also the demographic evolution here in the States. And now it seems that Europe as a whole is at front of two, let's say, main directions. Whether Europe enter into a process of reorganization and realignments based on certain values and on certain shared goals. The second option that I don't want to discuss is a Europe that loses its relevance in this ruthless geopolitical environment that we are living in. There are both sides of the coin. It's a big concern for me as a practitioner, as a policymaker, as a fellow, but at the same time, it might represent also an opportunity for Europe to make a jump and to go into a different stage.
That's a super interesting point of view, I would say. Obviously, you are an expert also when it comes to the Balkans region. My curiosity when it comes to geopolitics is how do you describe the current geopolitical moment for the Western Balkans? Do you see a region that is more stable, more fragmented, or still in a phase of transition?
Well, this is a very good question, and we are speaking about a region that I consider to be the underbelly of European Union. because we are surrounded by EU member states. We're surrounded by Italy, Greece, Slovenia, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. So when I speak about Western Balkans or Southeast Europe, I do have in mind the fact that Americans and US seen as the enforcer of the security perimeter. It was US intervention that stopped the genocide in Bosnia, the war crimes and the bloodshed in Kosovo, and it was US that intervened decisively in preventing Macedonia at the time from a war and from a civil war, an interethnic war at the same time. The role of Americans in our region is seen as indispensable. We have KFOR, for instance, the largest NATO mission in Kosovo, where US is playing a pivotal role. And the same holds true also about Bosnia-Herzegovina, where there is an EU4 mission. The position of US has been very key in maintaining different ethnic groups and in protecting the integrity of Dayton Agreement. So, on the other hand, Europeans were considered to be as allergic to the use of force. So we were relying mostly on European Union when it comes to soft power, when it comes to the democratic transformation, to the social and economic development of the country. For some countries in the region, including Albania, a pick or making a choice between US and the European Union would be immensely difficult, because it's like choosing between your father and your mother, or your dad and mom. And in the past, as I mentioned, US has been a critical actor also in supporting the not only NATO aspiration, but also EU's aspiration. Now, I think Western Balkan countries need to play carefully and decisively at the same time in implementing the EU-related reforms in order to join European Union as soon as possible. It is still a region in transition, to answer to your question. You have countries like Serbia and also Bosnia-Herzegovina, because of Serbian influence, that did not join, for instance, the sanctions, the EU sanctions against Russia. So it's very difficult to speak about a region in political and security terms, but it's mostly a region in terms of geography. The current situation, the current geopolitical represents a challenge for European Union and also for Western Balkans. I am a firm believer of the fact that if EU wants to show a success story, if EU wants to go after a low-hanging fruit, Western Balkans could be a litmus test.
I would say that at the moment we have a bit of a lack of success stories when it comes from European Union, so we hope to invert the trend. So you described a region that on one side has a very important ally, that is US, on the other side sees a growing influence from other geopolitical powers such as Russia and such as China. How do you think policymakers are balancing these things? And do you believe that they are aware of the risks of this double, let's say, alliance and collaboration, or not really at the moment?
Before the war in Ukraine in February 2022, the prevailing school of thought was that enlargement was dormant, that the status quo was the game in town, and then the business as usual, where leaders in the region could strike different deals with different major geopolitical actors, was the normal thing. So we have been living in a situation that I described in the past like living in a web of open marriages, where you could see the influence of not only Russia and China, but also of GCC countries, and other middle powers that are somehow exerting their influence also in our region. Let's not forget that when China speaks and works about one road, one belt policy, the connecting point between Asia and Europe goes through the Western Balkans. It comes to Russia, it's not only in terms of energy, but it's also in terms of the political support giving for countries like Serbia, for instance, at the level of UN Security Council. Not to mention here also the Orthodox brotherhood that is sometimes being exercised through the church. And the European Union, unfortunately, was in a complacent situation, so not acting decisively. And this was somehow also reflected after the war started in the continent. So countries like Serbia were continuing with this seesaw politics, basically sitting in 4 chairs at the same time, whereas other countries in the region were paying lip service to EU and the so-called Western values, but at the same time striking murky deals, bypassing the rules of EU competition that are reflected also in our legislation and also in our stabilization and association agreements that we have with the European Union, with third countries. Now my fear is that we are not confronted with this only with this dilemma whether countries in the region can fall under the Russian or Chinese influence or EU and US influence, because citizens in the region are oriented towards the EU values. The students are going from the region to European or North American universities. The lifestyle, the way of thinking, it's truly European. It's part of European set of values. The real question to me and the real challenge is whether there will be a real project for anchoring the countries into European Union, or countries might drift further towards authoritarianism. And if countries are drifting further towards this trend, and the price to be paid not only by citizens in the region but also by European citizens will be higher.
And that's exactly at the point I wanted to arrive. Obviously, I cannot run a podcast with a former foreign affairs minister of Albania without asking about enlargement. Enlargement is something that slowed dramatically. I remember when I was a kid that there was the conception that in few years all the Balkans would have become European Union, while this process slowed quite a lot. And so I wanted to ask once, what is, in your opinion, the biggest misconception that Brussels has about the Western Balkans today? And second, if you see the EU membership for Albania by 2030 realistic or not?
These two questions are related to each other. When it comes to the whole process, when you refer to the period when you were a kid, I remember very well Romano Prodi was coming up back in 2004 with the idea of this consolidation of the European projects. He had in mind the accession of Western Balkan countries, but also of some countries that at the time were not even part of the European partnership, and then creating security rings for European Union, not a buffer zone, in dealing with countries like Russia, for instance, or others that do not aspire to be part of European Union. Enlargement has been dormant for the last 2 decades, since the Thessaloniki summit that promised or that confirmed the European perspective of Western Balkan countries. Only Croatia joined European Union back in 2013. Because of Vladimir Putin, there is, and this is is quite cynical, is the enlargement is somehow revived, is back on the table. We are living into a catch-22 situation. So most of colleagues, most of the policymakers and thinkers and practitioners and diplomats I speak with agree with the fact that the enlargement of the European Union under present circumstances is inevitable. So if EU wants to survive, it has to show that it can deal with its own front gate. It can deal with its own courtyard. It's like this song of Frank Sinatra, New York, New York. If I can make it there, I can make it everywhere. So the same holds true also for European Union. If European Union can make it in the Western Balkans, and then it can also deal in a more strategic way with Vladimir Putin on the eastern side of the continent. It can provide more hope also for people in Ukraine, in Georgia, and in Moldova that would like to be part of this club. But the second part of this catch-22 situation is the fact that although most of them agree that this is inevitable, there are some dilemmas and question marks about the way how an EU with 33 EU member states could function. So the geopolitical moment has opened the door for the enlargement, but I don't think that enlargement will take place at the expense of functionality of the European Union. In this respect, we are still expecting European Commission to propose the document that will lay out the reforms that are needed to be undertaken by European institutions and EU member states in order to welcome new EU member states. In the case of Western Balkans, I don't think that this will pose a huge challenge for the functioning of the European Union, because we are speaking about 6 countries that are less than Romania in terms of population, or half of the population of Ukraine, half of the size of Ukraine. In terms of the budgetary implication, it's less than 1% of the GDP of the average of the EU member states that they need to contribute for this process. The whole Western Balkan 6 is less than it's equal to the GDP of Slovakia. Institutionally speaking, I don't think that it's going to be a big hurdle. Of course, I think that 2 critical components are important. The geopolitical alignment, especially under the current geopolitical situation, and the rule of law related reforms, because I don't think that there is a political appetite among key EU member states to welcome leaders or countries that could replicate some, let's say, bad precedents that we do see nowadays within the European Union. To caution those who are speaking about 2030, because it's too optimistic. But I think it would be realistic to speak about the next budgetary cycle of EU, so 2028, 2034, that could prepare, let's say, the next wave of enlargement of the European Union.
One of the ways in which I met Mr. Bushati is because Mr. Bushati, as a great Italian, someone could argue that he speaks Italian better than me. And we know that Italy and Albania have historically strong ties. We saw recently with several visits of the Prime Minister Meloni to the President of Albania, Di Rama. My question for you is, where do you see new opportunities for this cooperation between the 2 countries? And also, let's say, if you have a critical view on what we have seen in the last times with agreements closed between the 2 countries.
First, let me tell you something, not necessarily you, but your audience, because I'm sure you know that Italy for us was a European window of opportunity during communism. And this is the reason why most people from my generation understand or speak Italian. They did not learn at school, they learn it through TV. So it's not an agreement, it's not a relationship that should be based on individuals. This is my first point when we discuss about Italy and Albania, or Albania and Italy. And in the past, it used to be deeper in terms of the political relation and political activities in different spectrum of the political life in Italy and in Albania. It is rather strong nowadays because there is lots of human exchange. There are lots of flights from Albania to Italy and from Italy to Albania to various cities and various parts of Italy. There are more and more Italian tourists coming and exploring Albania. So it's not only Albanians going to Italy. There is a significant part of Albanian community that has immigrated to Italy after 90s, that is fully, I have to say, integrated into the economic, social, and in some cases even political life of. I am a bit critical because Italy has been the strongest European country supporter for our EU and NATO's aspirations. So, I mean, we don't have, let's say, any bilateral issue, or we don't have any differences when it comes to foreign and security policy with Italy. But we need to explore also other avenues of cooperation, because we are quite lucky to be a neighbor of a G7 country. And I expected more in this process, in terms of education, in terms of industry, in terms of Italian presence in the banking sector in Albania, and not focusing the whole attention of our relationship into the migration camps, which, as we have seen, it does not unleash the positive energy that we need.
Thank you very much for your statement on this. It's very relevant for especially for an Italian to hear a bit how the relationship is evolving. I would like now to go to the last two questions. I guess that many people that love politics dream to become a minister, in particular a foreign affairs minister, because in my opinion seems to me the most, the coolest, let's say, job within the government. Exactly. You agree? I wanted to ask, let's say, two questions. The first, how did you see that the role of the foreign minister changed with social media and with the so-called information warfare? And the second, that it's always, let's say, very important for our audience, what is one lesson from your time in government that you wish more young policymakers understood?
It's a changing environment. It's very difficult nowadays to define the hierarchy of the news. I mean, because of the social platforms, because of the digital innovation. I remember in the past, and I know also from the history, everything was somehow orderly and everything was going through diplomatic channels. If an incident or an accident at a certain part of the globe was happening, it needed some time to go to the media's attention. In this respect, media and diplomacy was not looking at each other as competitors. Nowadays, the news flies extremely quickly and extremely fast, which means that it puts objectively diplomatic services, foreign services, into difficulties, because they have to report back to the headquarters. They have to be instructed properly, and they have also to inform public opinion properly and objectively. But although the diplomats have to circle the square, for journalists and for people in the social media, it's easier. So we have to bear into mind the fact that the booming of social platforms and the digital innovation is putting foreign service and the life of a diplomat under an immense pressure. Then also dealing with the collapse of trust and popular consent. Nowadays, it's easier for people to rely on social platforms and on their smartphone, and sometimes trust something or a piece of info that might not necessarily be verified, rather than waiting for half-cooked information prepared by foreign services. And the same holds true also for human contacts. Nowadays, ministers, prime ministers, presidents can communicate via WhatsApp or Signal or other platforms or Zoom or Riverside. In some cases, it's very difficult for diplomatic service to go through the same routine that is supposed to go, because at the end of the day, it's the memory of the country. It's the memory of the state. When it comes to the main lessons, I think my impression is that we have somehow forgotten the art of statecraft, which is very important in formulating and executing foreign policies. It has to deal with humans. It has to deal with adversaries, with allies. And one of the aspects why we have somehow forgotten the art of statecraft in formulating and executing foreign policy, it's also because of the pressure coming from digital world and from social platforms.
Mr. Bushati, thank you very much. I want to conclude, let's say, with a nice story. Like 3 years ago, my favorite football team, Roma, won a European Cup in Tirana. And for one moment, I was so happy that I was about to tattoo in my arm Tirana. So let's
Great.
Quite linked to Albania, let's say like this. Mr. Bushati, thank you very much. It was a really fantastic and insightful comment. I am sure that our audience, let's say, will learn a lot from this conversation.
Thank you very much. È stato un piacere.